When I pulled up to the marina that cold Michigan morning, I thought I was just checking on my late wife's boat. Instead, I found flashing red and blue lights cutting through the fog and the HOA president in a plush white bathrobe sipping coffee on my yacht. She pointed at me like I was a criminal and told the cops I was trespassing on her property. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about a boat. This was a war. I'm Frank Delaney, retired Navy mechanic widower and proud owner of a small house by Lake Monroe. My wife Maggie and I built that boat together. The Maggie D. It was more than fiberglass and wood, it was her resting place. Her ashes sit beneath the mast. I visit once a month, clean her up, run the systems, talk to Maggie a bit. But after spending 3 months in Arizona with my daughter, I came home to find my sanctuary turned into someone else's vacation home. When I pulled up, a young deputy stopped me before I could reach the dock. "Sir, please stay back. This is an active situation." "Active," I said, holding up my keys. "This is my slip, my boat, the Maggie D." He hesitated, then said, "We received a call about an unauthorized individual trying to access a vessel under HOA custodianship." That word, custodianship, hit me like a brick. And then, out from my cabin stepped her, Karen Schulman, the new HOA president. Blonde, smug, holding a mug with the HOA's logo printed on it like some kind of royal seal. She smiled at the deputy, all sweetness and fake concern. "That's the man I told you about," she said. "He keeps claiming ownership of this property." I could barely speak. "Karen, what in God's name are you doing on my boat?" "It's not your boat anymore, Frank," she said calmly. "It was abandoned. The HOA took temporary custody due to safety violations, fuel leaks, environmental hazards, you understand." I didn't understand. I knew there was no leak. I had serviced those lines myself. I handed the deputy my registration, my title insurance, all of it with my name printed clear as day. He looked over the documents, starting to realize something was off. But Karen was ready. She pulled out her own stack of papers from a neat manila folder, official letterhead signatures, HOA seals, and said, "These are the emergency bylaws. We acted within our rights." The deputy sighed. "Mr. Delaney, this looks like a civil matter. I can't determine ownership here. You'll have to leave." I stood there staring at my boat where Maggie's ashes rested under the deck while Karen smiled that smug little smile. I turned away before I said something I'd regret. As I drove off, she stood on the deck of the Maggie D robe, fluttering in the wind like a conqueror's flag. That night, I sat in my armchair staring at the dark lake through the window. The house was too quiet. I could almost hear Maggie's voice telling me to breathe, to think before I act. I dealt with storms before, but nothing like this. A petty tyrant with paperwork. The next morning, I started digging. I found out Karen had slipped a new clause into the HOA bylaws, a vague emergency custodianship rule passed during a meeting that only 5 people attended. She'd weaponized bureaucracy. My neighbors were suffering too. Jim, a Vietnam vet, got a $500 fine for peeling paint. A widow down the street was told to remove a memorial for her husband because it was an unapproved lawn fixture. Everyone grumbled, but nobody fought back. I wasn't everyone. I gathered every document. I had titles, receipts, photos of the boat, and went to the next HOA meeting. When it was my turn to speak, I laid the papers on the table. "You had no right to board my vessel," I said. "There was no fuel leak. You fabricated it. I want my property returned immediately." Karen leaned forward, bored. "As a matter of fact, Frank, I'm glad you came." She slid a paper across the table. It was an invoice for $200. "Emergency contamination cleanup and vessel securing fee," she said. Then she smiled. "And due to your aggressive behavior tonight, your access to the marina is suspended indefinitely." The room was silent. My hands were shaking. She had just turned my plea for justice into another offense. She'd turned my grief into profit. I walked out without a word. A week later, the marina gate was locked with a keypad. I could see my boat from my driveway maybe 200 yards away, but I couldn't reach it. Karen had literally fenced me out of my own life. I almost gave up then. I remember sitting in the dark, wondering if maybe I was crazy. Maybe this was God's way of telling me to let go. Maggie was gone. Maybe I should stop fighting ghosts. Then Jim knocked on my door. He whispered, "Frank, Karen's kid threw a party on your boat. Beer cans all over the deck." I saw it. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't about a boat anymore. This was desecration. I knew then I couldn't just sit and wait. I called an old friend Skip, a Navy buddy turned Marine surveyor. "I need proof," I told him. "Real proof." He chuckled. "Since when does a lock stop a Navy man?" 2 mornings later before dawn, we met at the gate. Jim's son, who mowed the marina grass, gave us the code. "Give her hell, Frank," he whispered. We moved quietly, headlights off. When we reached the Maggie D, the cabin light was still on. Karen was inside, moving around like she owned the place. We waited until she left SUV, perfect hair clipboard in hand, then boarded. The air hit me first. It didn't smell like my boat. It smelled like cheap air freshener and coffee. On the counter, her mug. On a chair, her coat. In the drawer, a toothbrush and a romance novel. She'd been living there. Skip got to work documenting everything. No leaks, he said, taking photos of the dry fuel lines, the cut solar panel wires, the scratched teak deck. "This is Fraud Frank. Clean and simple." For the first time in weeks, I felt hope, real, burning hope. We had her cornered. But then, the counterpunch came fast. That afternoon, a man in a suit showed up with a cease and desist letter. Karen had accused me of breaking and entering HOA property. Then my phone rang, my daughter crying. Her HR department had gotten an anonymous email from Karen claiming I was unstable and had a mental health incident. They'd suspended her pending review. That broke me. I sat there with the letter in one hand and the phone in the other, realizing Karen wasn't just trying to take my boat, she was trying to destroy my family. I whispered into the silence, "She's ruining my daughter's life. Because of me." For a long time, I just sat there numb. I almost called it quits. Almost. Then I saw another envelope on the hall table from my boat insurance company. Policy canceled due to reported misuse by unauthorized third party. Karen had reported herself as the third party to void my coverage. That was it. No more appeals, no more diplomacy. She wanted war. She had it. I hired a quiet, sharp property lawyer named David Chen. Within a week, he found the HOA's Achilles heel. They didn't even own the marina. The docks, the land, all of it belonged to a regional water trust that was tired of dealing with Karen's nonsense. They were ready to sell. So I made some calls. Jim. A few retired vets from the diner. Guys who knew what chain of command meant. We formed the Lakeside Veterans Marina Cooperative. Pooled our savings, got a loan from my military credit union, and bought the entire lease. Karen didn't even know she'd just been evicted from her own empire. 3 days later, on a crisp Monday morning, I drove to the marina with a pair of bolt cutters. The steel chain snapped with a clean metallic crack. I hung a new sign on the gate property of Lakeside Veterans Marina Cooperative. All welcome. 20 minutes later, Karen came screeching down the road, face red as a stoplight. She jumped out of her SUV. "You're trespassing," she screamed. "I'm calling the police." I smiled. "Go ahead, but you might want to call your lawyer first. The HOA's lease ended this morning. You're the one trespassing now." Her mouth fell open. She stared at the sign, then at me. "That's not possible," she stammered. But it was. One by one, trucks and cars began pulling up behind me. Jim, the widow, whose memorial she tore down, the guys from the diner. They walked past her silent, carrying toolboxes and buckets. They didn't even look at her. Flags started going up on boats again, red, white, and blue fluttering in the breeze. Karen just stood there, powerless, her voice cracking as she shouted threats that no one heard. For a moment I thought it was over, but she had one last trick. She called the local news, told them I'd hijacked the marina in some veteran extremist plot. Then she scheduled an emergency HOA meeting to vote me out of the neighborhood entirely. Fine, I thought. Let's have a vote. The auditorium was packed that night, over 200 people. Karen sat on stage flanked by her remaining allies, pretending confidence. She gave a long speech about rules order and dangerous men who think they're above the law. Then it was my turn. I didn't give a speech. I just plugged in a USB drive. On the big screen behind her appeared a photo of Karen's white bathrobe draped over my captain's chair, then her coffee mug, then the beer cans, the tampered wiring, the cut solar panels, and finally the official surveyor's report in red letters: no fuel leak detected. Vessel abandonment claim unfounded. The room buzzed with whispers. Then my lawyer, David, took the mic. While Mrs. Schulman was enjoying her unauthorized stay, he said her son and 2 of his friends were filmed stealing this equipment. He showed the photo, grainy black and white, but clear as day. Karen's son caught red-handed. The crowd erupted. People were on their feet shouting, "Vote! Vote! Vote!" It was chaos, righteous, beautiful chaos. The motion passed. 92% voted to remove Karen and her allies immediately. She tried to flee the stage, shouting about lawsuits, but no one listened. Her reign was over. In the following weeks, an audit exposed everything: fake fines, phony maintenance fees, invoices to nowhere. Residents got refunds and apologies. Karen vanished, household phone disconnected. And the marina, it's quiet again. The gates open, the flags wave, and the Maggie D sits where she belongs. Sometimes I walk down the dock at sunrise, feel the cold lake air on my face, and rest my hand on the helm. There's a small bronze plaque I installed that reads, "For Maggie, still standing watch." Karen thought she could own power through fear and paper, but power built on lies always sinks.